Hey everyone, welcome to Wildlife Inspired. I'm your host, Scott Keys. Today's video, we're looking at the Z6 III, and we're talking specifically about the video capabilities. I think you're gonna find this one really interesting, so stay tuned, and we'll get to it right after this. Now, I've been using the Nikon Z6 III for over 30 days now. By the way, thank you B&H for sending me this. This one's on loan. I'm gonna send it back shortly. I've got a few videos I wanna make about it. We're gonna do some overviews of this, so just pros and cons in general, but this video specifically is gonna be about the video capabilities and how I have found it to perform as a wildlife photographer. But don't worry, if you're not a wildlife photographer, stay tuned, because we're just gonna talk about some general information about this. And I'm gonna start by referencing a video I did before on video basics. Now again, this is from the perspective of me, a wildlife photographer, but it's just some general guidelines, maybe getting used to some terms and what you look for in cameras. And one of the reasons I felt compelled to do this, this whole series about video, is that cameras are becoming more and more capable as video devices. And with the advent of social media, a lot of content creators out there, a lot of people are more interested in adding to their repertoire. So instead of just doing still photography, I see a lot of people doing video, again, whether it's for social media or for personal use. And I wanted to just talk about it. So again, if you want to reference my video on video basics, feel free to take a look at that first. I'm going to follow a similar format, which is just looking at three key components of the Z6 III. We're going to talk about resolution, frame rate, and formats available. I'll give you some specifics around that. I'm going to talk about the pros and cons for the camera in general. And I also want to stay tuned to the end, because I'm going to show you how I've used this and reinforce some of these examples. So we're going to get into all of that in this video, but I think the end you'll find really, really interesting. I've left some room over here on the screen intentionally so I can actually show you the videos. And I think you're going to find this one really, really interesting. And let's just start with like ergonomics and build. I think this is a pretty big one for me. Now, let's just start with the sensor itself. You've got a different sensor in here. They're calling it a partially stacked sensor. So kind of a hybrid between the traditional sensor and the stacked sensor of the Z9. Can I tell you every piece of benefit for this for videography? Probably not. Just know that it will help with certain things, and I believe the intention is to improve things like the blackout that you get from mirrorless cameras, so in between shots, and then improving some of the resolution and the speed of the overall camera. Don't worry too much about what it is, just know that it's got a little bit different sensor. The big thing is the processing speed of this is extremely quick. So we have upgraded the processor. And in doing that, with video, it's a big, big deal. It allows for better performance. So your autofocus is going to be faster. And I've seen that, a big difference between the autofocus, whether it's still or video, between this and the Z6 II that I already own. By the way, I'm shooting this on a Z6 II. The actual web is the streaming out is on the Z6 II. But it's going to give you a big jump in frame rate and the availability of formats, because it can process faster. It can do some things that the older generations can't do. I may reference that a little bit in this video, the Z6 II to the Z6 III, but in this video, I really want to talk about resolution, frame rate, and format, but we got to talk about just the build, because there's a couple other things I want to talk about. So we got the partially stacked sensor in here, we got the faster processor, the screen on the back. These articulating screens can all be a little different. On the Z8 and Z9, they will swing out only to the side and up and down. They don't give you this. So I can flip that around, I can film myself here, and I can look at myself here. Now for content creation, that is a huge deal, because often as a content creator, whether it's social media, YouTube, whatever it is, we're filming ourselves. It's a one-man team. So you put your camera up, you hit the record button, you run around in front of it, and you hope you're in focus, and you hope you're somewhere in the shot. In the past, I would have to hook up an external monitor to this to do that. It was a little inconvenient. This gives me the ability, because of this smaller form factor, by the way, very similar in terms of the size to the Z6 II, just a hair bigger. I read somebody say that this was clunky. I watched so many reviews on this camera and watched hundreds of videos. Somebody said this was clunky. I actually find the hand holding to be great. I don't find it to be large at all, maybe because I'm used to shooting a much bigger camera. But anyway, that flip out screen is a big deal for content creators. So I like this as a content creation camera actually better. And when I'm out in the field, this is probably going to be my go-to for using self-filmed video. I find it just really, really good. So anyway, we got this great flip out screen, best in class electronic viewfinder, very, very bright with really good resolution. Same with the back of camera. Now, the other thing that I like about this is I can close it down, protect the screen, or I can open the screen up and film that way, or I can do a combination of things. I can articulate this at different angles so I can actually be up here. I do a lot of insect videography and photography, and I find it really, really helpful to get perspective without crouching all over the place. I can use this screen and I can just tilt it up and down a little bit as I need. So I have found the screen to be very, very, very nice. I will say overall construction, that screen particularly, I'm not going to tell you it feels cheap. It's just not like the Z8 and Z9 where it's got that really robust articulating screen, but those screens do not flip out and turn around. So I really, really like the ergonomics of this. I think the build quality for a hybrid camera is right on point. And that's exactly what this camera was intended to do. It was intended to be a hybrid camera, really good for video, really good for photography. In my full review, I'll give you kind of my overall opinion of that, kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. And then the last thing I want to talk about before we move on is just the two card slots here. We get one CF Express B / XQD, and then we get one SD card here. It only records to one. For me, it's not a big deal. So it's only going to record to the faster card. To me, it's not a big deal because I'm shooting a lot of short clips for social media and YouTube, and the backup ability isn't huge. But if I was a wedding photographer, having that backup would be a big deal, or having that second card slot might be a big deal. So if you're an event videographer, that could be different because you don't want to miss the moment and not have it backed up somewhere, or one card spills over and it doesn't automatically record to the second card. There's a lot of reasons why that second card could be helpful for video. There could be some firmware updates out there in the future that could change some of this, but I'm just talking about this newest release. This camera, by the way, I think at the time of this video is going to be about 3 to 4 months old. But I really enjoyed basically the build and ergonomics. What I really want to talk about in this video is resolution, frame rate, and format. So let's go over to the side and just start with resolution. Couple of standard sizes for video. You're going to hear these terms a lot. HD, it might be called SHD or UHD, but this is your 1080 by 1920, and those are pixel dimensions. That's going to be about what that size represents. You may hear of 2K. We don't hear of it a lot. By the way, this video on YouTube, I stream out at 2K. I'm using a Z6 II up there to record, so I've had that model for years, very comfortable with it. Some big improvements from the 2 to the 3. I mean, huge improvements in video. Talk about those in a minute. Part of it is the resolution on this. I can get more resolution at faster frame rate. So I've got that 2K. We're not going to talk about it in this video. This camera doesn't really use 2K, but it'll go right up to 4K. That to me is the sweet spot of digital cameras. 4K gives you super quality. You can watch it very big on a high resolution monitor. And it also gives you the ability to crop in certain situations. I'll talk about that at the end in these kind of how I use it. It also gives you 6K. Now the sensor on this is 24 megapixels. Knowing that, we're limited in resolution. We can't really get bigger than 8K without doing some funky software or upsizing it. But 6K has some huge advantages. You don't hear about 6K a lot. But what 6K will do is give you the ability maybe to crop in post. So you overshoot the scene, probably exporting it in 4K or less, but I can shoot it bigger than the scene and I can actually crop it to where I want to be. So I told you that flip out screen, I'm self-shooting, I set it up, I walk around, I don't get quite where I want to be. If I was shooting it in 6K, I've got a buffer. As photographers, we know we crop still images, so we can do the same with video. We can overshoot the resolution and kind of crop it to the resolution output that we want. And in this case, I could go easily from 6K with a 4K. I'll put a little border around this and you can kind of see what that might look like. All right, so I've got the high definition, the 4K and the 6K capabilities on this. There's a little chart over there that shows you the size difference on that. And I will tell you, for those of you thinking, well, I really want an 8K camera. you are probably not going to shoot in 8K very often. It's a huge format, data intensive, software intensive. It just takes a lot of processing power just to edit those videos. And not a lot of people are going to ever be able to watch 8K. Now, this is in 2024, 2028 or 2032. Maybe we're talking about a different ballgame. But for right now, 8K might be overkill. And this camera is not intended for professional videographers, although I would argue you could use it certainly in many situations, but it's really intended for kind of a hybrid consumer, hobbyist, high-level hobbyist. And so that 6K video is almost always going to be plenty. My guess is most of the time you're going to be shooting in 4K with this one. Let's talk about frame rate. Frame rate just being the number of frames per second. Covered this in my video basics. Think of the numbers 30 frame rates per second or 24 frame rates per second. That's 24 is kind of the speed at which we see motion. So we don't really go below 24 frames per second in video. 30 is kind of a sweet spot. That's maybe an industry standard, 30 frames per second. This one has the ability to shoot in 4K at much higher frame rates. So we can go all the way up to 120 frames per second. And that can be a lot of frames, and it's really nice to play around with. How I use that is to slow it down. So I'm not gonna send that out or export videos at 120 frames a second. That's a little bit of overkill. Remember, I just said we only really need 24 or 30 to see the motion. 60 frames per second gives you really smooth motion when played at full speed. But what most people use that higher frame rate for is to slow it down. Now at 4K, I can get 120 frames per second. Let me take you down to 1080. Let me take you down to that high definition, that 1920 by 1080. I can get 240 frames a second. Now that is pretty special. The Z9 that I have can't even do that. It gives me the ability to really slow it down. I can slow that video down 10 times. Now for some applications, you don't need that, right? You're a wedding photographer, maybe that works, maybe it doesn't. But for somebody shooting really cool insects in my yard, which is one of the things I love to do, or somebody shooting birds in a controlled environment, I can slow that down really, really slow. I'm going to show you some examples at the end, so stay tuned. But just know it's got some really great frame rates available, some very high frame rates available. And I'm going to get into formats here, and I'm going to show you all of the frame rate combinations between resolution, frame rate, and format. I'll put a chart up there so it'll make some of this pretty easy. But I do want to talk about this format. Format being the file type or the video type that's saved here. Put a couple of formats up here on the screen. It's going to give you H.264, that's kind of a standard, at 8-bit. I got H.265, which is a little bit newer codec. In that video, I explained what a codec is, but just know codec is just encoding and decoding. It's an algorithm or software that just compresses an image and then uncompresses, I should say, a file of video. It compresses the video and then uncompresses it. Some compression better than others. Some save a lot of space. So there's all different, I could do a whole video on formats. But I want you to understand one thing. The Z6 II only had one format available. So you couldn't shoot in RAW and you couldn't shoot in ProRes. So, and I think everything on that camera was 8-bit. So this has an 8-bit option. It has a 10-bit option at 265. It's got a 12-bit option to shoot RAW. And it also shoots in log. And a little bit tougher to talk about log, but just know that it is a little more advanced option. And it gives you the ability to do a lot of post-processing. So there's a lot of people that prefer to shoot in log. The disadvantage to log is that it has to be processed. It comes out of the camera. I'll put examples up here. It comes out of the camera looking super flat, and then you apply what they call a LUT, a lookup tool. You apply that in post-processing. The nice thing about this is you can apply many different LUTs to get many different looks. So you may have a certain style or a look that you like to be consistent with your videos, and you can apply that to all of your video, or you could play around and try different ones. So these are the formats that are available, knowing that this is a very good assortment of formats. You've got the ability to kind of dummy it down to 8-bit, more bits, more color depth. So when you go from 8 to 10, it really jumps up in the amount of colors. And when you go to 12, it's just outstanding. There's even 14-bit, which is almost unfathomable how many colors there are at 14-bit. But these are your options. I will tell you that that is a 100% solid choice. So I want to break this down. I talked about resolution, frame rate, and format. I'm gonna put a chart up here, and this tells you kind of everything about the formats available. And you can see it's a great assortment of formats, giving you everything from 120 frames per second at 4K, 60 frames per second max at 6K, and at high definition, 240 frames per second max. That little yellow highlight, that's the maximum performance at each resolution. It also tells you which formats each one is available for. I am thrilled with that. I will tell you, as a wildlife photographer, and I'll get to some of these examples in just a minute, I'm typically shooting 4K 120. A lot of advantages for that. I talked about the ability to slow it down. It's very good resolution for me. I don't normally feel the need to shoot more than that unless I feel like I'm gonna crop for some reason. So being a wildlife photographer, that 120 4K is an absolute sweet spot. Do note a couple things. At those higher performances, and this is a standard issue with a lot of cameras, you can get some overheating. It's so intensive in terms of the performance and the data that's going in and out. And with video, it's so much of this is just around data, that when you choose a higher resolution and a higher format, it's really pushing these files, and it's working extremely fast, and it can overheat. So I've overheated this a couple times, not too bad. I think I got one. I was running the video for a long time at 4K 120, but I actually just forgot I was recording, and I went back and the thing was starting to overheat. Generally speaking, I shoot very short clips, so I'm not worried about that. But again, take a look at that if that's a big deal for you. If recording high performance over long periods of time is an issue for you, you probably want to look at another YouTube video or do some research on overheating for these bodies. Not a great concern for me. All right, so we talked about the resolution, the frame rate, and the format, and these are all home runs for me. But I want to talk about pros and cons real quick, because just knowing that it's a good body and it's got the articulating screen and the really great viewfinder and all of the specs doesn't really tell me how good is the video. So we're going to talk a little bit about pros and cons, and I'll weave some of this in here for that. Now, I've come up with a list of pros and cons. If I verbally forget to mention one, I'm going to list it over here. I got a lot of pros, a few cons on this. And before we get to the cons, I just want to talk about one of the cons is going to be, and I say this when I say video quality, it scares people. It is extreme low light video quality is not going to be as good as some other cameras. So there's some reviews out there on other video cameras in this price point, Sony and Canon. I will tell you, if you were nitpicking and really deep diving things like low light performance, this is not going to perform as well. I've seen, side by sides. Haven't tested it myself, but I'm going to take the word of experts who have done this. There's another thing called shadow flickering that occurs, again, in extreme situations. So for me, didn't notice any of it. I'm going to put a pro over here as, video quality in a minute, and then I'm going to tell you it's a con. It's really only a con for me if this is a high level, very tough situation environment. So I don't think for the average, for who this is marketed as kind of a hybrid prosumer hobbyist, high level hobbyist, I don't think that's going to matter at all. And because I get the other performance as a hybrid camera, I don't put as much weight on it. If you are shooting strictly video, I would probably tell you, you may look somewhere else. Like, it may not be the perfect camera for you if the only thing you're doing is video. But I mentioned all those stats, right? The resolution, frame rate, and format, those are all super appealing. I mean, it's just really, really good stuff there. So don't be scared when I say you may read some things about the camera having a little less dynamic range. 99% of people are not even going to notice that that's a thing, but it is a real spec. It's a little bit light on dynamic range compared to some of its competitors. And then that low light performance is probably not up to par with some of its competitors. Let me go through the pros. I mentioned the ergonomics. Just overall, I like the ergonomics and the screen. In my full review, I want you to watch that. I'm going to talk about these little clips on the side. these little rings, because I don't know what they were thinking when they designed that. It's not a big deal, but that was my only hit on this ergonomically, as they're in a bad place. Loved the screens. These really are best in class screens in terms of the EVF and the LCD screen. Very, very nice. That better processing speed. So speed is a huge win for this. And the speed results in really good autofocus. The resolutions I found to be just ideal. The frame rates I think are a huge win. Being able to get to 240 for HD is a huge win for me as somebody who likes to slow things down. And then the flexibility with the formats and having raw formats that are encoded in camera. What I mean by that is, in the past, if you were shooting some high-level raw footage meaning just you're getting the raw data, it was so much information, a lot of camera bodies couldn't even process it. So what they would do is give you an HDMI output or an output to an external monitor, and some cameras had the ability to do that. So I believe the Z6 II had that ability, where you would take the HDMI cable, stick it into an external recorder, but that external recorder is going to cost you money too. It's another expense, and it's also a little inconvenient to be hooking up this monitor. So having this all done in camera, big deal. So I've got that raw format available in camera, a longer recording time. I found this to be a great external, or a great hybrid option, and it does have some nice features with external battery charging. So if that, I mentioned the battery life, not the best, that it's that EL15 battery is a little shorter in life. I shouldn't say shorter than their better batteries. Not short overall. I never ran out of battery in a regular situation. There is a battery grip that you can buy for this. You can get a couple more batteries in there, but it also gives you the ability to power this externally, and that can be a really nice feature. So that's what I got. Those are my pros. If I think of anything else, I'm going to throw it down there under the pros column. Let's get into the cons. Don't have a ton here, but I do want to mention a couple things. One, I mentioned that single card recording could be something. The low light performance, and again, I'm so careful when I say video quality, because people want to run with that and say, oh, I've heard the quality of the video isn't good. I'm going to show you the quality of the video is excellent under 90% or maybe even more, 95% of conditions. You are not, unless you really zoom in and scrutinize shadows and details, you're probably not going to see any difference in the quality of the video out of this camera. So I find the video quality to be very good. And then I'll put the battery down as a con. It's not a huge deal, but when you shoot with the larger, for me, the larger Nikon batteries, they last a really long time. This one's just going to go through a little quicker. And with still photography, it's not always a huge deal. I see the battery's getting low, I'll switch it out. With video, it can be a little bit bigger deal. So it's a little bit of a negative, because if you're recording video, the last thing in the world you want to do is have to stop midway through something and switch the battery. However, just know that there's some options out there, battery grip, and then also the external sourcing. So that's what I've got for cons for you. Now, if you want to stop the video there and just hit the subscribe button, do all that. Leave a comment, tell me the video was great and you enjoyed it. However, I want to get into some of these case scenarios where I actually use it, and I want to show you some of this. So I'm going to show you the resolution, the frame rate, and I'm going to slow it down and show you what that looks like. And then I'll show you some practical examples of how I use it. So let's get into that right now. The first example I'm going to do is just slowing things down. I want to show you how much I can slow things down. Now, we mentioned frame rate, and I'll talk about this 120. If I divide that by my 24 frame rate, which is what I typically do for slow motion, you can do it at 30. It's going to give me a factor of 5, meaning 120 divided by 24 is 5 times, and that means I can go down 5 times slower. So I can shoot the video at 20% speed and get slow motion. I'll show you a quick clip. It's about 3 seconds of what this bubbler, this little fountain that I have out in the yard, looks like at regular speed. And then I'm going to show you what it looks like at 120 frames per second, slowed down 5 times. That's what it looks like. First of all, there's a big difference in the amount of time. I get just a much longer video. Right now we're at 15 seconds. Now that was shot at 4K. So I had the ability to do that at 4K resolution. Now let me show you what it looks like at high definition, slowed down 10 times. So this is 240 frames a second. And I'll go full screen so you can see this. Know that, again, I stream this out in 2K. The video is smaller than 2K. So the HD format's a little bit smaller. So there's a little bit of a difference in size and overall resolution. Now let me just put them up on the side. Now here resolution doesn't matter because I'm gonna scale it down. It's gonna be smaller, but I'm gonna show you the 5 times speed and the 10 times speed right next to each other. And you can see a difference. And it looks really, really good, even at 24 frames a second. At 30 frames a second, it wouldn't be quite as slow. The quality might look a little smoother, but I think this looks really smooth at 24 frames a second. So I'm very, very pleased. And this is a big application for me because I really like to slow things down with my birds. I'm gonna show you what that looks like now. Now let's start with this really high frame rate of 240. The one thing about this one is it's in HD, and typically we are gonna shoot video horizontally for social media. Most applications are gonna be vertical. So if you're thinking about TikTok, Instagram, and that sort of thing, YouTube, typically more of a wide aspect ratio, but they have these stories and reels out now, and a lot of it is geared towards iPhone photography, which is typically vertical. I know a lot of videographers just hate that concept. With this one, the disadvantage of this is most of the time I'm gonna probably shoot it vertically because the resolution is just right vertically. If I shoot it horizontally and crop it for Instagram or social media, I'm gonna lose a little bit of resolution there and it may not be ideal. So with these, I shot these vertically. I'm gonna show you what that looks like. And again, I'll put the resolution up here and the frame rate just to remind you. Let me show you at full speed. Watch how fast this action takes place. This is a little B, I mean, just a couple seconds, right? And it's done. Now watch what happens when I slow that down from 240 frames down to 24 frames, 10 times slower. I mean, it's a big deal. It's a big difference. This little skipper over here is called a Sachem, and I'm gonna show you the same thing. I'm gonna shoot it vertically. And what makes this tough, by the way, when you're shooting vertically, you don't have a lot of wiggle room in here. So often you're trying to track it, and I'll show you the difference between this and 4K in a minute, but you're trying to track it and it's moving. So while I love the frame rate, I need to work with subjects that are a little bit more predictable and aren't flying all over the place. It can be really, really tricky. So this little Sachem, let me show it to you at full speed first, okay? And now look at this thing slowed down. I mean, you can see all of its little movements. So for me, again, practical applications, I'm a wildlife guy who loves native plants and insects. I find this really, really cool for social media. I love to share this content on social media, this slowed down content. Last one here, I'm gonna show you at 240 frames a second. I'm a bird photographer. I'm gonna show you a robin at my little pool outside my window. And you can see it, watch this at full speed. I mean, it's just, what is that, a second or two? He's just in and he flies off. Now notice it was very hard to track because I'm shooting vertically. So I wasn't able to really track them very well, but watch what happens when I slow it down 240 frames a second. And you could see that. So now that 1 or 2 second video is well over 10 to 15 seconds and you get a lot of neat detail. So this is the social media application, right? This is the super slow, crop it down, or don't crop it down, but shoot it vertically, slow it down, export it to social media. It can be a really, really nice application. There are certainly other applications. I'm just telling you how I use it. I want to show you one more thing, and this is at 4K 120. Remember, I don't get 240 frames a second at 4K, but I do get 120. So I can slow this down between 4 and 5 times very comfortably. One thing I want to do before I get there, I'm just going to put a graphic over here on the screen. This is what 4K would look like if it was at full resolution. Again, I'm shooting this out to you at 2K on YouTube, but if this was 4K, one of the advantages of doing this is if I intend to put this out to social media, I can crop it for social media and I get a lot of wiggle room. So let me show you. Remember, if I'm shooting vertically and that subject is kind of moving over here and here, it's really hard to track. But if I'm shooting it horizontally and that subject is typically moving this way, I'm still capturing it because my much wider resolution is going to be all around here and I can capture it. And I can actually, instead of trying to track it everywhere perfectly, I can edit it in software. So as long as he's still in the frame, I can actually move the frame around a little bit. So I have that big 4K resolution. I'm gonna crop it, and if I wanna crop it vertically to get that high definition resolution, I can still put out a very good quality video to social media at high definition by cropping down the 4K. I hope that makes sense. I put the visual up here. I hope that helps, because I'm going to show you practically how I do it, and I still get it at 120 frames a second. This is a wasp. So let me show you what this wasp looked like at 4K. Very quick, right? There's not a lot here because it's moving so fast. It's so hard to see what these insects are actually doing when they're this fast. Now let me slow it down. And again, I'm not getting 10 times slower, but I'm getting 5 times slower. So at 20% speed, this is what that same, and I'll put it on the side here because I can fit it now, right? Because it's vertical. Put it on the side here. That's what it looks like. And you could see it's cool to me. I don't know if it is to you. To me, it's really, really cool. Love this stuff. I was testing this camera for video, and a yellow warbler came into my little bird pool, and this time shot horizontally at 4K. So now I'm shooting it this way. So now if the warbler is moving around, I get a better field for him. And now once I get him where I want him, I can edit it. So it's easier to find because it's a lot of resolution and it's horizontal. I can edit it to a vertical composition for social media. I could slow it down, and I get what I think is pretty cool. So these are just a few practical applications. As a wildlife photographer, this is what I use. I mentioned before that 4K 120 is my sweet spot, and here's why. Because I get a lot of resolution, which I can eventually scale down for social media, and I just really, really like the camera. So really like this camera a lot for video. I mentioned the pros and cons. I'm gonna put them up here, kind of summarized together. If I missed something, you let me know. If you've used this for video, let me know, did I miss something, specifically for video? Did I miss a pro or a con here for you? Best comment, if there's one really helpful comment, I'll try to pin it and put it to the top. So read some of those comments if you've used it. If you haven't used it, did you find this video helpful around video for the Z6 III? It's gonna be part of a series. I know this was a little longer video. I wanted to show you those examples, though. I think the examples really illustrate the point and give you some practical usage for this. There are tons of different usage, though. So no matter what your genre is for videography, I think you're gonna find this more than capable, with the exception possibly of a very, very high-end videographer shooting in very tough conditions. I will tell you that might not be the best one for you. So I'm gonna do a series of these. This is the first part of this. I'm gonna do a comprehensive video on everything where I'll skim through video and reference this one, but stay tuned for that series. If you wanna watch this series, though, you gotta be subscribed, so subscribe to the channel, hit the bell for notifications. That'll let you know when a new video comes out. Look forward to reading your comments, and as always, I hope we can continue to find inspiration in wildlife together.